Sviatlana Tsikhanouskaya is the exiled leader of the Belarusian democratic movement and the most prominent challenger to the country's leader, Alexander Lukashenko. Today, she's not just fighting for her country's freedom, she's arguing that Belarus is now central to Europe's security and that the fate of Belarus is tied to that of Ukraine. Welcome to DW. Let's start with that idea. How do you believe the fates of Belarus and Ukraine are connected?
We have to understand that Belarus and Ukraine are like post-Soviet Union countries, and Russia, with its imperialistic ambitions, doesn't perceive neither Belarus nor Ukraine as separate nations that want to choose their future by themselves. They perceive us as their proxies, as appendixes, satellites. But we are facing this subjugation. We want to get rid of this Russia's influence on our political aspirations, and we want to get rid of this. So that's why we have, together with the Ukrainians, we want to return to European family of countries and just, Russia pulling us back into...
I can see that. I can see how you as a Belarusian, want to get rid of Russian influence. But just to go back to that point, the idea that how does what happens in this war of Russia's invasion of Ukraine, how does that outcome affect your country?
Look, we understand that both our countries are on the front line of fighting against dictatorship, against tyranny. And, of course, the fate of Ukraine and Belarus, and actually the whole Europe, is decided now on the battlefields of Ukraine. When Ukraine wins this war, it will be a chance for Belarusians, to change the situation in Belarus. But also, it's vice versa. We understand that without free and democratic Belarus, there will be constant threats to Ukraine as well, because while Lukashenko is in power in the country, though he seized this power, Belarus can be given to Putin as a launching pad for further attacks, for constant provocations or blackmailing Ukraine. There will be no peace and security, for the whole region. So that's why Belarusians perceived fight against Russia by Ukrainians as our own fight. And that is why so many Belarusians are fighting today shoulder to shoulder with Ukrainians.
And you're clear that Belarus has already taken on that role of being a launch pad for Russia into Ukraine.
Yeah, absolutely. It's here we have to divide Lukashenko's regime and Belarusian people. It was Lukashenko allied to Putin who provided our territory for invasion of Ukraine. The first missiles have been launched from our territory. Our infrastructure, our soil was given to Russia. But it was made against the will of Belarusian people. Belarusians are fully on the side of Ukrainians. We are anti-war nation. We are pro-Ukrainian nation. And that's why, of course, Lukashenko has to be punished and brought to accountability for all these war crimes.
Let's talk about what's happening in Ukraine, or in and around Ukraine at the moment. All this diplomatic activity that is going on between Ukraine and Washington and Russia. What are you making of what you've been seeing and hearing this week? Definitely,
the peace in Ukraine has to be achieved on Ukrainians' conditions. And we see that, the first list of, demands now is being discussed, and another list has appeared. So it's a process of discussion, but of course we all want peace in our region. But we have to make sure that Ukraine will not lose in this war, because if we lose Ukraine, it will embolden Russia in their ambitions. They will not stop in Ukraine. We have to understand this. We have to understand that they will threaten Europe. They will continue to test your borders, the level of your resilience. We already see balloons over Lithuania, drones over Poland, migration attacks on the borders. They're testing how far they can go until there will be reaction from Europe. The problem of Russia is that they don't know where their borders are. Who will be the next is the only question if we lose Ukraine.
Let's talk about what's going on in your country at the moment. There are reports that the Trump administration and Belarus are negotiating the possible release of more than 100 political prisoners in return for the relief of sanctions against Minsk. Do you see that as a good thing?
Of course, we are grateful to President Trump and his administration and recently appointed Special Envoy John Cole for release of political prisoners. At the moment, we have 1,300 people behind bars.
So you're glad that the US president is engaging directly with the Lukashenko regime? Of
course,
right.
You know, he publicly demanded release of all political prisoners. We don't have to be confused with this. It's purely humanitarian track. President Trump wants people to be released. He wants to save people's lives. It's not change of the policy of the USA. Of course, for Lukashenko, people is bargaining chips. Lukashenko wants to sell people more expensive, and of course, the Americans, you know, lived in some sort of sanctions for these people. But Americans, our American partners, in constant communication and coordination with us, democratic forces, and
really, they're talking to Lukashenko and they're talking to you as well.
Absolutely, yes.
And this is at what sort of level are you engaging with the US administration?
On the same level. John Cole with me in dialogue, and Chris Smith, who is from State Department. We are meeting with the representatives of President Trump as well. So. Americans are not naive. They know whom they are dealing with, but they put as priority rescuing of people from prisons. People are dying there, and I really encourage them to continue this track, not changing their policy.
And so as Washington engages with Minsk, should they be pressing for more than just the release of prisoners?
Absolutely, yes. Americans know our position that at the moment, release or it's better to say forceful deportation of Belarusians, it reminds us revolving doors. Some people are released, twice more are detained. Right. So this process might be endless for Lukashenko. So we demand stop of repressions in Belarus. The changes in our country should be irreversible and systematic. And here, European Union can play a huge role. While Americans continue this humanitarian track, these political changes can be supported by European Union. So no lifting of sanctions from European side, no change of the policy until democratization of Belarus, until free and fair elections.
So you want Europe to keep the pressure on the Lukashenko, but is there any sign that the pressure that's been applied so far has had any effect? He's still very much in control.
Look, actually, of course, sanctions is not silver bullets. Sanctions don't change, situation, like this. But it's a very effective instrument to put pressure on Lukashenko, to empty pockets, to deprive them resources to support military forces that terrorize the Belarusian people. Of course, sanctions are effective, and sanctions are more effective if the sanctions against Russia and Belarusian regime are harmonized, for the two dictators cannot use each other to circumvent them.
Can we talk about you and the fact that you are now exiled from your homeland? You're exiled from Belarus. I think you're living now mainly in Lithuania. What does that feel like to know that you cannot go home? Do you still regard Belarus as home?
Absolutely, yes. I want to return home, and I'm working hard, to bring changes in Belarus. Maybe you don't know, I was sentenced to 15 years in absentia already, and I'm declared as extremist and terrorist by the Lukashenko regime, so I'm target of this regime. But of course, I want to, and my children want to return to Belarus and start rebuilding our wonderful country after 30 years of ruining by Lukashenko regime. Of course, we would like to be in Belarus and fight, but when the level of repressions is like in Stalin's time era, it's impossible to do something visible inside the country. So that's why we have to work from exile, but we really achieved a lot during these 5 years. We managed to build alternative institutions of power. We managed to formalize relationship
from outside the country.
From outside. We managed to formalize relationship with European Union, European Parliament, USA, Canada, UK. So we perceived as true representatives,
right.
Absolutely. So, and the countries are working with us, not with illegitimate Lukashenko. It's de facto recognition, de facto political relationship. Okay. So that's why, and also we are working for changes now, but we're also working for post-Lukashenko era on reforms, on new constitutions, because we'll have to rebuild, everything and to integrate Belarus into European institutions.
Can we finish with your message to the world? You're out there, you're spreading the word about Belarusian democratization. What is the thing that you want people outside the country most to know?
I think that people who live in democracy, decades and many years, they start losing this importance of democracy, and they think that it's like natural. But we have to fight for democracy, and Belarus is an example. How it's easy to lose what you have and how it's difficult to get it back. And while you're enjoying democracy, it's moral obligation of every nation, every person, to support those who are fighting against dictatorship. We have to understand that dictatorship in one country can be spilled over, other countries. It's like cancer. Until you cut it to the very last cell, it can go further and further. So that's why support those who are in need, support those who are paying the highest price, who sacrifice their freedom and lives for security, for democracy that you enjoy. Don't think that problems will be solved somehow themselves. Everybody has to contribute.
Exiled Belarusian opposition leader Sviatlana Tsikhanouskaya, thank you so much.
Thank you.